Welcome to Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis, brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm Tim O'Malley with Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated, John Brice of Football Scoop. And as John Brice mentioned earlier this week, this is the season for Notre Dame. It is for Notre Dame fans. It is for Notre Dame nationally. It won't be treated that way by the Notre Dame coaching staff, thankfully, win or lose. But fair enough. This is the biggest moment of the season and of Marcus Freeman's career at Notre Dame today.
Yeah, I've been saying it. I'll continue to say it. It's a juncture point in this season. It's a juncture point in the Marcus Freeman era, which is, I guess, 31, 32 games old, something like that. It's not very deep, but it's as deep as it gets today, especially with Notre Dame going into a bye week, especially with Notre Dame already suffering an inexcusable loss a few weeks ago against Northern Illinois. The Irish appear to be relatively healthy overall from what we know. The Cardinals appear to be potentially banged up a little bit. I'm sure we'll talk about that in the coming moments, but just a game of great magnitude for the Irish today.
Tim, I'm going to start with Louisville's defense because I think we right away go to what Louisville's offense did last year. But Louisville's defense brings back the three players that played the best against Notre Dame last year. Ashton Gillotte, who is a game wrecker, TJ Quinn, who I don't think is, but was that day, and Quincy Riley, who enters this game with, I believe, 14 interceptions in his career, one against Notre Dame. He shut down the poor receiving corps last year. Quincy Riley is a questionable player with an ankle injury today.
Yeah, a huge challenge for Notre Dame's offensive line. Anthony Knapp is going against a great pass rusher, as he was in Game 1. He held up really well the first time in Texas A&M with Nick Scorton, but a little different animal here today. They're going to move Gillotte around. And, you know, this line is still trying to gel. You've got the two new starters, the veteran guys, but you add them to the mix. So this is it's a great challenge for Notre Dame's offensive line. I also think that on the flip side, it's going to be a great challenge for Louisville's offensive line. They have transfers from Texas Tech, Northern Illinois, and Yale, and they haven't held up really well, especially in the ground game. So, you know, both teams' strength along the defensive line go against offensive lines that are a little suspect.
I think the finer point on Gillotte for Irish fans, when Jack Kaiser came back, Xavier Watts, Howard Cross, and Riley Mills, I was like, wow, this is setting up. Then I randomly saw that Ashton Gillotte came back instead of going to the NFL, and I thought, oh, that's an issue. I mean, he is a player. But moving to Louisville's offense, this is the best quarterback, Tyler Shook, the best passing game, at least, that Notre Dame has faced this season.
Yeah, and quickly on Louisville, what they've done when they went out and paid exorbitantly to get Jeff Brom to come home, pried him away from Purdue. They made a commitment then to NIL, and Louisville has been as effective in the NIL as anybody in the ACC. They just haven't had the same headlines as, say, a Florida State or a Miami, but Louisville has done an excellent job with its NIL programs, and that's why you've seen Jeff Brom able to bring in so many guys out of the transfer portal each of the past two seasons. When it comes to the Louisville throw game, I'm with you guys. If Notre Dame's D-line stands up, if Louisville's as ineffective running the ball as it was last week when it had just like 59 total yards, 52 total yards, something, a really paltry number against a Georgia Tech team that is nice but has been run on this year, then I think Notre Dame can force Shook into some interceptions. As TP and I noted earlier this week on the podcast, he's got 17 or 18 career picks. He will throw it away.
None this year.
Right.
Important. None
right.
this year.
Yeah. Thrown, I think, 89 pass attempts, not played a full game except against Georgia Tech. And Louisville overall on offense didn't look great, but he has in the past shown a propensity, and in the past he's not really faced secondaries as good as the Notre Dame secondary, in my opinion. A couple of other notes as I talked to people this morning, talked to people in Kentucky last night, some more people on campus this morning. There is some murmurs out there that Louisville may have some beats and bruises in addition to Quincy Riley. There's some thoughts this morning that Louisville may be down or have another defensive back limited, and there's thoughts that one of Louisville's top two tight ends also may be limited or unable to go. Those, we don't have anything definitive at this point, but it's certainly circulating out there. Again, I've heard from people in Kentucky, heard from people on campus here, so that's something to monitor for the Irish going into kickoff.
Tim, and I love the game within the game here. You know, Tyler Shook, who is due for an interception, great passing game, averaging 16.3 yards per completion, going against a great Notre Dame secondary.
Only sacked once, too, this season.
He
Tyler Shook's only been sacked once.
Yeah, and he's not a great runner. He's mobile enough, but I love that matchup of their passing game against Notre Dame's pass defense. Notre Dame with 6 interceptions. I think there's only about a handful, 10 teams maybe in the country that have more than that. So that's a great matchup. We're hearing talk about Colin Lacey perhaps giving it a go today.
Who you loved in the preseason.
Yeah, I loved him. I thought he was, you know, Ja'Cory Brooks is pretty darn good too, as it turns out. And Chris Bell's averaging 27 yards per catch on 6 grabs. But Colin Lacey was a guy that really jumped out at me coming from South Alabama. He, of course, suffered the broken collarbone during the preseason. as you mentioned, it takes a little while to get back.
It's
I'm
like Faison coming back.
Right. I'm sure he's going to. I'm sure he'll give it a go. But I can't believe that he would be running it at high efficiency. But as it is, they've got some. They did lose Jaden Thompson, who has a couple of touchdowns, and he won't be playing today. But Brooks and Bell are good wideouts, no doubt.
Two more things, and we'll get to Riley Leonard in the offense, which apparently we don't have to talk about anymore after one game last year. But last week, special teams has been a problem for Notre Dame at home. It hasn't been on the road. I don't expect special teams to be porous the rest of the year, or poor the rest of the year for the Irish. But neither Notre Dame nor Louisville can afford to lose, like outright lose special teams in this game and win the game. Now, you can break even. You can just have a nondescript special teams day. But Notre Dame really has to right the ship after last week.
It does, and it's time. It's overdue time that Notre Dame has a plus play in special teams at home that turns momentum in that instance, that gives you a chance to turn momentum big picture for the game. They're overdue. They're too good in the return game. Will Faison get a chance in the punt return? Can Jaden Harrison or one of those other guys do something? When you think back about Marcus Freeman's big wins at Notre Dame, USC a year ago turned because of some special teams plays. Clemson, I think 2 years before that, turned because of turnovers in special teams. It's high time, especially with this game being paramount to this season, it's high time Notre Dame not just survive in special teams, but turn special teams into a plus.
We have to talk about Riley Leonard.
I was about to say, Tim, the quarterback. Yeah.
No, we got to talk about because Notre Dame really struggled in the run game against Louisville last year, and Audric Estime had his worst game by far, 10 carries, 20 yards. And you mentioned that, and so that's a concern. But you have a running quarterback and a guy that's averaging 80 yards rushing per game, and he has to play a significant role in the running game. Obviously, they have to continue what they started over the last 2.5 quarters of throwing the ball down the field a little bit more. But in order to do that, I think you've got to do something to really loosen up the run game. We know that Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are quality backs, but Audric Estime was a quality back, and they shut him down. So Riley Leonard today is going to, as it always is going to be really key for Notre Dame's run game.
If Riley Leonard doesn't have a good day running the ball, Notre Dame does not have a chance of winning this football game, because if he won't have a good day passing the ball if he doesn't run the ball well.
Yeah, I just think this is also setting up to potentially be a Mitchell Evans game. He's gained in usage over the course of the season through the first 4 games, and I also think because Louisville is going to be so focused on Riley Leonard and limiting him in the run game to try and make him throw the ball more, I think you may see an instance where Mitchell Evans initially chips on the edge and then can slide out either into the boundary or get something going in the seam. I'm still surprised that we haven't seen more Mitchell Evans in the seam in the middle of the field, especially as good as he was last year in that particular zone. And his best game arguably last year was the Ohio State game when he hurt the Buckeyes in the seam downfield. Now those Ohio State linebackers are better than Louisville's linebackers, so I really think this can be a Mitch Evans game.
This edition of Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis was once again brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame in Elkhart, Indiana. For Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated, John Brice of Football Scoop, I am Tim O'Malley, and we will be back post-game after Notre Dame number 15 Louisville takes on number 16 Notre Dame